The morning trains were packed. At 8 a.m. on March 20th, 1995, Tokyo's subways pulsed with life. Office workers in pressed suits stood shoulder to shoulder. Students clutched backpacks. Mothers with toddlers balanced strollers between doors. The city moved with its usual rhythm, quiet, efficient, unshaken. But beneath that calm, 5 men rode 5 trains, each carrying a small plastic bag wrapped in newspaper. The bags were soft, filled with liquid, harmless at a glance, but what they carried was invisible death. Sarin gas, and within minutes the world's most advanced city would be choking on poison. Tokyo had seen disasters before, fires, earthquakes, even war, but nothing like this. Nothing so intimate, so surgical. This wasn't a weapon dropped from the sky. It was hand-delivered. The group responsible called itself Aum Shinrikyo. To outsiders, it was a fringe religious movement. To insiders, it was a doomsday cult. Founded by a half-blind yoga instructor named Shoko Asahara, Aum blended elements of Buddhism, Hindu mysticism, Christian apocalypse, and science fiction. It promised salvation from the end of the world, and Asahara positioned himself as the only one who could guide his followers through it. His charisma was infectious. So was his paranoia. By the early 1990s, Aum Shinrikyo had thousands of members, many of them highly educated, doctors, engineers, chemists, men and women who'd abandoned careers to live in compounds, meditate, and follow orders. But Aum wasn't just a cult, it was preparing for war. Inside its compounds, members stockpiled weapons, dug tunnels, acquired Russian military equipment, and most chilling of all, they began manufacturing chemical agents, Tabun, VX, and Sarin. The goal wasn't symbolic, it was extermination. Sarin was developed by Nazi scientists in 1938, a nerve agent, odorless, colorless, and fatal in microscopic doses. It attacks the nervous system, shutting down muscles, suffocating the victim from the inside. It had never been used in war, but Asahara saw its potential. In 1994, Aum tested Sarin in the Japanese city of Matsumoto, killing 8 people, injuring hundreds. The government suspected foul play but couldn't prove it. The attack was dismissed as a mysterious gas leak. That success emboldened Asahara. He believed Armageddon was near. And if the government wouldn't strike first, Aum would. The plan was simple: 5 members, 5 subway lines, 5 coordinated drops. Each man would carry a sealed plastic bag filled with liquid sarin. A sharpened umbrella tip would pierce the bag. The gas would evaporate, spreading silently through the train car. The targets were calculated. All 5 trains would converge under central Tokyo, near government buildings and intelligence agencies. The goal: mass disruption. Death on a scale large enough to terrify a nation. The men chosen for the job weren't assassins. They were loyal followers, scientists, doctors, scholars. They believed Asahara's voice, believed they were purifying the world. They boarded their trains between 7:45 and 8 a.m. Each one carried death wrapped in newspaper. At exactly 8 a.m., the punctures began. On the Chiyoda line, a bag was stabbed beneath a bench. On the Hibiya line, 2 attackers dropped their packages on separate cars. On the Marunouchi line, a man left his bag by the door and stepped off. It took less than 60 seconds. The gas was invisible. Victims felt it before they saw it. First, a burning in the eyes, then blurred vision, a strange tightness in the chest. People began coughing, falling, seizing, vomiting. Passengers stumbled out at the next stop, collapsing on the platform. The gas clung to clothes, skin, air. Station staff rushed in to help, many without protection. They too fell ill. One collapsed while trying to move a leaking bag. Another died trying to shut the train doors. Chaos spread station to station. No one knew what was happening. Was it a chemical leak? A fire? A terrorist act? The city had no precedent, no framework for an attack from within. People screamed for ambulances. Phones jammed. Police arrived wearing surgical masks, unprepared for Sarin. Stretchers filled sidewalks. Emergency exits overflowed. Victims stumbled into the streets, coughing blood. Some were blind, others unconscious. Hundreds poured into hospitals, many on foot, their lungs failing. Tokyo's medical system was pushed to the brink, and Aum's poison kept spreading. At 8:10 a.m., train operators began shutting down lines. But the damage was done. One train ran for 2 full stops after the gas was released, leaving behind a trail of contamination. Another car remained sealed until mid-morning, its toxic cargo continuing to kill. In total, over 6,000 people would be injured. 13 would die. And the victims weren't just passengers, they were workers, medics, police officers, people who had rushed in to help, not knowing they were breathing in death. One victim was a young station manager who found a leaking bag and removed it with bare hands. He died hours later in a hospital bed, gasping for air. Another was a woman who collapsed with her toddler in her arms. The child survived. She didn't. The symptoms were brutal: convulsions, vomiting, respiratory failure, blindness, days of hallucinations, weeks of recovery, and many who survived would live with permanent damage. To this day, some cannot walk without pain. Others suffer from PTSD, flashbacks of gas-filled tunnels, strangers collapsing around them. The trains never stopped, but the city did. As chaos unfolded underground, Aum Shinrikyo retreated into silence. The leadership denied involvement. Members burned evidence. Lab equipment was dismantled. Files destroyed. Witnesses silenced. But it didn't work. Within days, investigators found traces of sarin production, chemical signatures that matched the Matsumoto attack, surveillance photos, blueprints, gas masks, hazmat suits, manuals printed in Russian. The truth unraveled fast. And then came the raids. Hundreds of officers stormed Aum compounds across Japan. What they found defied belief: bunkers, gas chambers, weapons labs, rooms filled with chemicals and cult literature. And deep beneath the surface, plans for more attacks. Tokyo was stunned. This wasn't an isolated act, it was part of a doctrine, a holy war waged not with swords or sermons, but with science, a modern apocalypse engineered in concrete basements by men in white coats. Shoko Asahara was arrested 2 months later, dragged from a hidden room inside Aum's main compound. He said nothing. He would not speak publicly for years. The trial would become one of the longest in Japanese history. Asahara and his inner circle faced charges of murder, terrorism, and illegal weapons production. The evidence was overwhelming. Testimonies from defectors painted a picture of psychological control, forced obedience, and messianic delusion. The cult had brainwashed doctors into building gas labs, chemists into making VX, engineers into building incinerators for bodies they planned to use. They weren't just preparing for Armageddon, they wanted to cause it. And they almost did. 13 members were sentenced to death, Asahara included. He was hanged in 2018, along with several others. By then, Aum had splintered, renamed itself, spread online. The physical threat was gone, but the memory was not. The Tokyo subway attack didn't just scar a city, it shattered a national myth. Japan had seen itself as orderly, lawful, safe, a country of quiet trains, low crime, and common purpose. But on that day, beneath the polished glass of skyscrapers and neon lights, the unthinkable had happened. A domestic cult had built weapons of mass destruction and used them. No borders had been crossed, no bombs smuggled in. The terrorists were homegrown. They had studied in Japanese universities, rode those same trains, shopped in the same markets. That's what made it worse. The terror came from inside. In the years that followed, Tokyo rebuilt. New security protocols, chemical sensors in stations, emergency drills. But the wound never fully closed. Every morning, commute carries a trace of memory. The benches are wiped more carefully. The air is watched more closely. A plastic bag left behind draws more eyes than it should. And survivors still walk those platforms. Some have gone blind. Others still can't smell. Some carry the scars in their lungs, others in their minds. They remember a city that inhaled death and kept moving. A morning when the air itself became a weapon. Thank you for listening to Road to Ruins. Subscribe for more true stories where systems fail and people pay the price.